This is going to be like my weekly kind of rant video in a way, and the topic of this video is essentially Generation Z, Generation Alpha, whatever you want to call it, and society as a whole. How basically the age range of people who are under 18, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger, are basically screwed and are not prepared for the future whatsoever by a few reasons which I'm going to sort of rant about and talk about in the video. Now, you've already heard of society kind of devolving backwards in a way. Many people who are under the age of 10 now do things like vaping, especially in sort of cities and stuff. Even me, I live in somewhat of a rural area in a way. People who are like 10, 11 in primary school age are vaping. People have been finding vapes, elf bars, all that sort of stuff in the toilets. I've done a video on vaping in the past, and one of the comments was from someone who worked in a primary school saying that they were finding vapes in toilets, like because people think they can flush them down there or something, even though they can't. But whatever, it's just heinously unimaginable that people are actually doing this kind of stuff due to sheer lack of ignorance, due to sheer lack of education, due to the fact that these companies specifically market these vapes towards younger children, because while it's illegal, they kind of want them to buy in a way because it does essentially give them more profit. But other than that, it's just the fact that they're so like colourful and stuff. All these kids just like want to buy it. They want to do it because it's cool. All their friends are doing it. One person does it because people like to follow the crowd. They like to follow the leader. If one popular person does it because they have an older brother that also does it, the entire school population will follow. They will follow. They will start to do it. And then it kind of goes backwards. The backlog happens for then generations. One person from that following category will then introduce it to their younger siblings, and the thing just continues and continues and continues, despite the fact that it seemingly cannot be stopped. Despite the fact that this stuff is technically illegal to buy, shops still sell it to kids who are under 18. They don't ask for ID. They just sort of give it to you, don't really do anything about it. At least that's what I've heard. Never personally experienced that, but yeah, it's still such an odd thing. Kids who are in primary school age, I don't really know how they actually end up getting that, because they can't look anything over 10 years old if they're in primary school, realistically. I don't know how anyone who's actually selling this has the moral capacity to actually be able to comprehend what they're doing, understand what they're doing, and actually be able to live with it and sleep at night in a weird sort of way. But I don't really like to watch the news all that much. I like to stay away from politics and all that sort of stuff. But on the way to college, my dad was dropping me and my friend off, and on the radio, there was some news about some 12-year-old girl, I think. Won't mention any sort of names, locations like that, because I'm a normal person. But they had been admitted to hospital, but they admitted themselves to hospital because they were worried that they were going to die because they couldn't breathe properly. They already had asthma. They hadn't been taking their inhaler properly. They had been vaping for an extended period of time, and they literally were struggling to breathe. They could have potentially died. It could have been fatal. And this was a publicised case, a publicised example, despite the fact that these things have been happening underground in underground cases for so long now. The effects of vaping are yet really unknown in the long term. Yet I reckon in 5 years' time, the hit is going to come where people are going to get a smack around the goddamn face and realise that they are prematurely screwed for life because of a choice they decided to make a few years ago when they were regularly vaping. And if this effect is multiplied when you consider the age of these kids, 12 years old this person admitted to hospital was, 12 years goddamn old. Imagine that with like someone that's half their age, 8, 6. These are the kind of ages where people are still also vaping, because a 6-year-old's not going to understand the impact that that's going to have on their health. The majority of the population that is able to educate themselves doesn't really understand that anyway. But to an extent, I sympathise with the people that are this young that are vaping, because they don't really know any better. They see big colourful flavour. My friends are vaping. I'm going to do it too. They don't really consider the health deficits whatsoever. My friend that I was with in the car, we were discussing this, and he thought that he put the majority of the responsibility on the sort of kids themselves. And while I would personally agree with that for people who are my age, people who are like a few years younger, 13, maybe the limit is like 12. Once you get beyond that, once you get younger than that, I think there's a level of society has really screwed these kids' minds up in a variety of ways to actually mean that they have taken the choice and decision to actually vape. Once you get to my age, 16, 15, 17, once you get to that age, no matter what your friends are doing, no matter what society is telling you is cool, popular, etc., it's up to you to decide whether you want to make that choice or not. But when you consider the way that the psyche of younger kids' ages are, it becomes a lot more easy for them to be manipulated, and they don't really understand the causes, the consequences of their choices and stuff. But I say with a lot of my videos, 12 is the sort of age where things start to become your decision and become your responsibility, while maybe you can, if you want to have that accountability, take responsibility for decisions you made as a younger child. That won't hurt you in any way. That can add to your sort of level of responsibility and stuff. I feel like at that age, it is mostly because of policies that the government has set in place, school, and your parents. That's what affects the choices that you make in your life, as well as your friends and stuff, the other people around you. The way that the crowd, the mob sort of acts is likely how a child who is experiencing and seeing and understanding that mob's existence, they are also likely to follow that mob. Hence why vaping is just exploding in popularity. One person does it because it was introduced by their older brother who is of legal age to do that sort of stuff, and then it sort of expands and expands and expands, and it's absolutely insane how many people are doing it. You are weird if you don't vape if you are my age. It's an insane phenomenon. That's the first thing that I wanted to rant about, how vapes are just the most dumb thing that humanity has ever come across. I was having a chat to my sister as well. Apparently they're going to ban smoking and cigarettes completely for people who are born under the age, or not born under the age, but are born in the year 2009 and like upwards. Who are born in the year 2009 and upwards. If you are born later than that, you will never, ever, ever apparently be able to buy cigarettes. This is not a dead set law just yet. It's being considered, I think, by the government anyway. But that was an interesting thing that you may have not known before. But it's not like a dead set in stone thing just yet. But I do personally hope that it goes through. Maybe people are going to disagree with that, but I really couldn't care less, because the banning of this sort of stuff will have a net positive effect on every single person that exists on this goddamn planet, as well as things like vaping. If that was banned, while people who smoked wouldn't have the sort of alternative to go to, while vaping is definitely healthier than smoking and does save lives, the way that it's marketed means that children get it as well, and it's an awful, awful thing. It's a very, very hard situation to sort of comprehend and to battle and to sort of combat. But I think maybe just the phasing out of these drugs will be what ends up happening, where there is a society in 20 years down the line where vapes and cigarettes don't exist anymore. They only exist as illegal drugs. That means many people, while they will still use them because illegal drugs still exist, they are still on the sort of market in a way, they will be a lot more expensive and a lot more sort of easier to come by. They'll be a lot more expensive, a lot harder to come by, and because nicotine, the stuff inside of smoking, the addictive thing inside of vapes and cigarettes, is a lot less sort of addictive than other drugs that are sort of commonly illegal nowadays, many people are going to be less likely to sort of care if a vape is now 100 quid, because once they are illegal, that's the kind of prices that may eventually be set or something like that. I don't really know. People are going to be less likely to care about the sort of price. They're going to be less likely to buy that because it's so expensive, because nicotine isn't as addictive of a drug as many other things that are a lot more expensive of a drug, simply because they are a lot more addictive, they're a lot more potent, they're a lot more stimulant, and that's why people like them, they pay more for them, supply and demand, all that sort of stuff. But other than that aspect of Gen Z where kids are vaping, it's dumb, especially if they are of the conscious age of 12, which is when I personally think that is the age where people start to make choices on their own and it becomes their own responsibility. Once they're past that age, that is just Gen Z being blooming dumb and absolutely stupid. But before then, kind of, it's a weird, more grey area. But there are other things about Gen Z, Gen Alpha, all that sort of stuff that I want to rant about, especially due to technology, social media, iPad kids, because many people who are my age, they look down upon people like the 8-year-olds who are on iPads, despite the fact that realistically their social media addiction is basically the exact same thing. they're addicted to their phones, the kids are addicted to their iPads. Not all that much different. Maybe something to analyse if you sort of look at it that way. I personally don't think I have an addiction to either a phone or an iPad. I rarely use my phone all that much. The majority of my screen time most days is from camera, from the app that I'm currently using as I speak this right now. The rest of the time, I spend like 10 minutes per day on social media, the majority of it probably on like WhatsApp or something. Some days I will spend the majority of my screen time messaging a single person if I'm having like a chat with some family member or something who I haven't seen in ages or spoken to in ages or something. The majority of my phone screen time will majority be spent on WhatsApp or some other thing. Today, I reckon the majority of my screen time will be spent on camera because I've been recording for quite some time now. But social media addictions are incredibly rampant, especially with TikTok. TikTok is like the most degenerate hellhole of society. Spoken about it a lot. Kind of going to rant about it a little bit, but it's not really the focus. More TikTok, what it actually does to kids. If you imagine an iPad kid, what they're actually seeing on the vast internet is a worrying thing. Not even the short form content that TikTok actually produces, just the sheer stuff that's actually on the videos is just dumb and awful. Every time someone tries to show me a TikTok in the sort of sense of humor thing, I just absolutely cringe and close my eyes, do whatever it takes to sort of stop watching it. Because there's some freaking stupid Roblox thing where they're just I actually give up with society in that sort of sense. But iPad kids, they're watching that kind of stuff on things like YouTube Shorts, the absolute shitpost, all that sort of stuff. They're watching that stuff. They are exposed to that sort of stuff, and then there comes the topic of things like pornography that they are exposed to at such a young age, which is horrific, by the way. Things like people like 8-year-olds, before they are actually be able to go through puberty and able to actually function in that sort of way, they are still like watching porn before they actually have the ability to do anything with themselves. It's an incredibly psychologically, morally interesting topic, which I myself haven't done much research on it simply because I don't really want to devolve into those sort of subjects that much. I often don't post on TikTok, don't post on Instagram because I hate the two apps. So I spare myself with the hit of mental health with potentially more views, more self-esteem, more dopamine hits, because I simply can't be asked to deal with the things that I'm going to see on my daily exposed to those apps. Not worth it. If you have those apps, not worth it whatsoever. Get rid of them. It's a waste of your goddamn time. I'm trying to help you here, so don't get mad at me for saying this kind of stuff. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your focus. It's just an absolute waste of society as a whole. Many people say things about entrepreneurship, how it's just providing value to the people. TikTok is like providing value to the people by basically providing them with the time to waste for them to forget about their problems, forget about their thoughts, and just do absolutely nothing and jack shit pretty much all day. Horrible sort of circumstance and place. Things like iPad kids, I feel bad for them because a lot of people look down on them, except the fact that society sort of molded them to be that way. It's a horrible thing. I was never that bad of an iPad kid. I didn't have a personal iPad, but my parents had one, and I would sometimes use that. I played things like Angry Birds and Minecraft on it when I was like 7 years old. I don't necessarily hate myself for doing all that sort of stuff because it was just a part of my life. I can't really change it now, but it just makes me think it's a lot worse now. I'm glad I wasn't exposed to awful things that kids are exposed to today when I was using an iPad for random things like Angry Birds and Minecraft, which are a lot more wholesome than the stuff that a lot of kids are exposed to nowadays. Because the internet is so vast, while I don't think that this stuff is intentional, I do feel like a lot of companies, a lot of governments really seem to hate the younger generation because they are experiencing the majority of the burden of actually the stuff that's happening in the modern world. Many people say that older people, boomers, they can't live with technology. I think it's the younger generation that are actually most at risk because the internet is so vast. They can get exposed to so many things that they probably shouldn't be whatsoever. And while it may not be intentional, I do feel like governments and companies specifically seem to maliciously target children in a weird sort of way for them to be exposed to awful things, heinous things, because, yeah, it seems to happen far too often, far too much for my liking, and there's not really a hell of a lot I can do about it. I saw a video on YouTube. I was watching a guy similar kind of age to me, a lot more subscribers, probably makes a fuck ton more money, but oh well. And he was saying how there's not really much that society can do to stop this. Society, governments, the people, the elites in power, they have the power to do stuff, yet they seem to just not, because there's a lot of other things to care about as well. It just sort of slows decision making down by quite a lot. The most that I can do is upload this video. The most that I can do is try to spread the message of self-improvement. I never try to consider this as uploading videos anymore. I try to consider this as spreading guidance and a message, knowledge and education in the case of the science videos, but all that sort of stuff. And the least that you can do is to engage in some way, shape or form in this video, like, comment, subscribe, and that will hopefully blow this video up, means that more people can see this message and maybe differences and impacts can actually be made. So with that, I highly recommend subscribing, because I love this community of young tribal people who are willing to improve themselves so much more than they already have, and good luck.